The Culture Pop Podcast is brought to you by the law offices of Jacob Emrani.
Accident or injury, call Jacob Emrani. Call Jacob.
Hey, it's Mase. If you or a friend or loved one is injured in an accident, the first person you should call is my friend Jacob. When I did this, Jacob was great. He helped me by talking through the next steps, which really put my mind at ease. When you're injured in an accident, you got to have an expert. That's why you call Jacob, just like I did. Call Jacob, 844-24-JACOB. That's 844-24-JACOB, or visit calljacob.com.
Call Jacob.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Culture Pop Podcast. I'm Steve Mason, along with Sue 𝐓𝐇𝐄 𝐁𝐑𝐀𝐕𝐄𝐒. This is the show where we talk about everything happening in the world of pop culture. Great guest today. It is Saturday Night Live alum Bobby Moynihan, one of the voices of The Bravest Night on Hulu. Plus a look at the box office in 2024 and a review of Babygirl starring Nicole Kidman. Sue Ballou, how you doing?
I am fine. I'm very fine, actually.
Oh, good. Very fine. I got to I have worked out so much, Sue.
Mhm.
I've worked out 17 of the last 23 days.
Wow.
I am
And
hardcore right now.
what'd you do the other 6 days?
The other 6 days, I probably ate. Because despite it all, I'm up about 3 pounds from the holidays still. But
Oh, talk about being up in weight-wise. I go to the
yes.
doctor yesterday just for a checkup.
Yep.
And I brace myself for the scale. And they always laugh at me because, I take my jacket off, I take my shoes off. I would take
You're
everything.
not the only one that does it. I take
No, I
everything
know.
off. My watch
Right.
off. I mean, everything.
Yeah, everything. So I look at the scale and I weigh more than I expected. And then they took my blood pressure right after that. And my
Yep.
blood pressure was so high. And I said, "Oh, it's because you just told me how much I weighed."
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, no, I do that every year when I do my physical. I'm like, hang on a second. I worked a lot this year. Let me get this jacket. Let me get this belt. Let me get these shoes.
Right.
Still
Contact
not happy.
lenses. Yeah.
Contact lenses, exactly. Just put you a little over the top. So, Sue Ballou, it's the year is up. 2024 is over, and it's an interesting year in terms of movie box office. So, in the year 2024, the box office, US and Canada is the way they track it, $8.75 billion. That's 3% lower than 2023, and it's 23% lower than 2019 pre-pandemic.
I'm surprised that it was lower than 2023 because I would think that people are just coming back more to the
You
theater.
know, some of the movies did not work early in the year. And it was, at one point, the year was down 27% at one point this year because movies didn't work like Mad Max Furiosa, The Fall Guy. Early in the year, stuff just didn't work for whatever reason. It didn't hit the bullseye for moviegoers, but it picked up later in the year because once Inside Out 2 got to theaters, all of a sudden we saw a string of hits. We saw Inside Out 2, we saw Despicable Me 4, the holidays were good, Sonic the Hedgehog 3, Mufasa, The Lion King, Nosferatu did really well. And then in the fall, we had Beetlejuice, Gladiator 2, Wicked, of course, has helped. So at one point, down 27%. About midway through the year, finished down only 3%, which people in the business say, well, we saved the year, right, with the second half movies. Now,
Right.
one thing that jumped out at me from the list, and I've just got the top 20 movies in terms of box office for this year. It is all sequels and animated films, virtually all. So Inside Out 2 was number 1, Deadpool and Wolverine, sequel number 2, Wicked. I guess that's original source material. Oh, it's adapted source material,
Adapted.
but it's new.
Mhm.
Moana 2, Despicable Me 4, Beetlejuice, Dune 2, Twisters, which is a sequel, Godzilla: The New Empire, Kung Fu Panda 4, Bad Boys Ride or Die, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, Gladiator 2, Sonic the Hedgehog 3, and then it gets a little bit better after that. It Ends With Us, which is the Blake Lively movie, which has caused so much controversy, which we'll get to on an upcoming show. The Wild Robot, which is a wonderful animated film, my favorite animated movie of the year. Then Venom, The Last Dance sequel, Quiet Place, Day One sequel, Mufasa, Lion King. I guess that's not original source material. And then Ghostbusters, Frozen Empire was number 20. Now, when I look at that, I don't see a healthy movie industry. Do you think?
No, and it just sounds like everybody's lazy.
It sounds like there are no new
writing
ideas in the world.
Yeah. So
The
that's
only
that's
original,
disappointing.
yeah, the only original movies there, I guess if you count Wicked, are It Ends With Us and The Wild Robot, and everything else is a sequel or a remake.
Right.
Now, I think the movie business got to get its shit together because this will only last so long. They are devouring their own IP and maximizing its use. And eventually, they're going to have to do new stuff. There have to be new movies, new ideas. Otherwise, we're just rehashing every couple of years. And I think you're going to see an inexorable decline of the box office as the creativity does exactly the same thing.
Now, how did it affect the box office from one sequel to another? Like I know, what was it? What was the one you said did really, really badly with
Badly Furiosa, Mad Max
Furiosa. Yeah. So I know that really didn't do well, and we had talked about on a prior podcast the casting, not casting Charlize Theron again or whatever. So the other sequels, how did they fare at box office wise compared to the last sequel?
Oh, you're saying some of these I'm just going to work off the top of my head. Inside Out 2 is the biggest Inside Out movie.
Right.
Deadpool and Wolverine, biggest Marvel movie in a while. Wicked, obviously huge. Moana 2, bigger than Moana 1. Despicable Me 4, bigger than 3. Beetlejuice, bigger than the first Beetlejuice. Dune 2, bigger. Twisters, bigger. So they are bigger movies.
Right.
But again, there's no originality. And also, just generally speaking, not a lot of risk. These are low risk movies. And I think in the end, it's easier to sell a movie both to a studio, to creatives, and to the audience. Easier if it's based on some past IP than it is to throw out a completely original concept. But I hope that starts to change because there's got to be new stuff.
Right. Well, it's all about money, isn't it? Really,
it is all about money,
which is depressing for viewers because we want content.
Exactly. And the content is, and some of the content is just ridiculous. Like I'm just off the top of my head, like they made us Get Smart a couple of years ago, right? Remember these movies that are like old Starsky and Hutch. It's like, who remembers Starsky and Hutch? It's old IP that just has the slightest bit of familiarity, and they're turning it into a movie. I don't think it's healthy for the business, and I don't know if that's going to change anytime soon. But I would like to see some new stuff.
There's a lot of doom and gloom too. When I watched the trailers, one of the last movies that I went to see, it was all just apocalyptic, just dystopic, just horrible negativity. It's like I don't want to see it. Just the reality in a lot of ways of what's going on in the world is enough. I don't need to go to be entertained to see it. It's not entertaining to me. Like, did they come out with another Smile movie? Did they come out with a sequel?
Smile 2. Actually stars Jack Nicholson's kid.
Okay.
Yeah, and he looks just like Nicholson. But here's the thing about those horror movies, they're cheap and they make money.
Yeah, I know.
Cheap and make money. So I think the big time blockbusters, and we'll get into this on an upcoming show, the movie lineup for 2025 looks better than the movie lineup for 2024. So we'll do a look ahead on an upcoming Culture Pop podcast. Now, one movie that is out and causing a stir right now is Babygirl. It is the new erotic thriller directed by Helena Rain. It stars Nicole Kidman, who gets involved in a twisted, kinky sexual relationship with a much younger intern played by Harris Dickinson. And the kinky relationship is basically S&M. And it is shocking, but I actually found a way to like this movie. What about you?
Um, it wasn't my favorite film, but I appreciated what they were doing. One aspect of it that I kind of liked was the Fatal Attraction kind of feel to it. You
Sure.
know, like you didn't know what was going to happen, whether she going to get caught. Um, so I like that titillation.
Yep.
Much more than the sexual part. I like that it wasn't your typical S&M
Well,
kind
what
of
is a
behavior. Like,
typical S&M?
well, you think of people being tied up and blindfolded and leather and being whipped and
This was
stuff
more
like
like
that.
being
More it was
humiliated.
more humiliation. Yes, it was more mental S&M than it was physical S&M. It was wanting some power and control over somebody, but it wasn't in a hurtful physical way.
Right, right. It was, yeah, it was humiliation more as opposed to any sort of physical, uh, ball gags and that kind of stuff. I don't know why that popped into my head, ball
Well,
gag, but
if it was Family Feud, that would have been ball
ball
gag. Let me
for
see.
100.
Let me see ball gag.
Yeah.
Um, but
Um,
what I wondered about. Obviously she was dissatisfied with her sexual relationship with her husband, and I wondered if, and could she have just said, and there wouldn't have been a movie maybe, but if she would have just said, "Hey, let's do something kind of kinky." Like, was she just so turned off by him sexually that that wouldn't have even mattered? Or was she just seeking something with a completely different person? Because,
right. Well, her
like,
husband, Antonio Banderas, who
mhm,
is not an unattractive man,
yeah.
who she didn't. Now, I will argue that she tried to coach him to do this, that she tried to get the character, Nicole Kidman's character, get her husband to engage in some of this kind of stuff. At one point, uh, she wanted a pillow held over her face.
Right, right.
Right. So I mean, there's her husband was kind of in on it, but not into it at all. The part of it I loved is, and again, I think kinkiness is something that we think about and don't often talk about. Um, but I thought it was interesting that here is Nicole Kidman's character, who is a successful CEO, who creates technology that controls where packages go. And here she is completely in charge and in control. And the one thing she wants when she has sex is to have no control whatsoever.
Oh, I
She's in
I
so
actually
much control in her life and no control whatsoever during sex. She doesn't want it.
I thought the same thing. I thought, how ironic that she works for a robotic company, you know,
Yep.
and what she wants is the exact opposite of not the mundane sex, the mundane behavior of your with your mate. She
Right.
wanted something that was a lot like out there.
Well,
Um,
the rule is that if you're involved in this kink, this sort of power dynamic kink that they are involved in here, if you're in control in life, you like being not in control in sex. And if you are not in control in life, you probably are more interested in what Harris Dickinson is involved in the movie, which is being a dominating force, humiliating her. I thought some of the stuff could have been ridiculous, and it wasn't. I mean, her lapping up a bowl of milk, I was like, you know,
oh,
I kind of buy this as a thing. I bought it. I think it is a divisive movie. It's not for everybody. Um, but I thought she was great, and we've seen so many actors this year, actresses who are involved in roles where there's a lot of nudity. This is another one where there's a lot of nudity in this movie. We saw it with Demi Moore. We saw it with Margaret Qualley in The Substance. Here again. I thought Harris Dickinson, who I don't remember seeing in anything,
He was
was
in
great.
Triangle of Sadness.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was a crazy movie.
It was a crazy movie.
That was a crazy movie. But here he is, serving up the humiliation with kind of this cocky, cavalier swagger. He's not looking for intimacy, which I find interesting. He has a girlfriend, but instead of exploring this stuff with her, he wants to explore it with this powerful woman who he can make do anything she wants. The movie's Helena Rain is Dutch. She wrote and directed. She has explored power dynamics and societal norms in the past. I say good for Nicole Kidman. She got snubbed. She got a Golden Globe nomination. She did not get a SAG Awards nomination. I think it's still possible for her to get an Oscar nomination for this. And I also think Helena Rain could earn a nomination for Best Original Screenplay because it's crazy stuff. It's really interesting stuff. It could have gone completely off the rails, and instead, I bought it.
Yeah, Helena, she actually had a great question that she posed at one of the screenings of the movie. She said, "Is it possible to love all the different layers of myself, not just the ones that I like to present to the outside world?" And I thought, huh, that is really cool. Cause people have certain impressions of people,
Yes.
like when I watch the show Billions, I mean, you talk about S&M with Maggie Siff and
Yeah.
Paul Giamatti, and if you just knew them and their characters, and then you found out that they were into S&M, you'd be like, what? Like they would be the last people that you would ever think would be doing that.
Right.
So
Right.
that to me was kind of an interesting aspect. And then I wondered, the age difference too. I mean, is it a kind of a statement on women who are in their menopause years to just like some women don't want to have sex at all because it's painful to have sex. But,
Right.
just that physical, like I think that you get to a certain age as a woman and you feel like, I know for me, I remember walking down the street in Manhattan with my niece when we were doing the radio show. So this was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So, I was in my mid 40s and my niece is, she was in her early 20s and she's beautiful and she's a dancer. And I remember walking down the street with her in New York and like not one guy looked at me and just eyes on my niece. And that feeling of being a woman, being a certain age, and you just don't get looked at the way you used to get looked at,
Right. Right.
And I used to joke that the only place where I'm like kind of hot is when I, go to Miami because everybody who lives in the condo where I used to go see my aunt was 80. So they were like, you're an item, So I think it has something of that too, aside from the whole wanting to be controlled. You
Let
get
me
this
throw
young.
one. Let me throw one thing at you that I find is interesting. So she's got this thing where she wants to be controlled, humiliated, and she gets off on that. She never really tells her husband that. She has to
No.
go out of the marriage to actually find that. And it makes me wonder how many people in their marriages have something kinky that they want to do in their heads that they are afraid to tell their spouse that they want to do.
Well, that's what I said. I like. I mean, I have
Like,
no
what
idea
about you? What aren't you telling Tom?
Um, I don't really hold back of what I
No?
tell Tom. No, not sexually. I don't at all.
Yeah.
But I wonder if I wanted him to do something like completely out of character, how he would react. And that's why I wondered why they seemingly had a really good relationship just on paper. I mean, it looked like they got along, they liked each other, they were, whatever. Sexually, it wasn't happening for her. But like you said, why couldn't she present to him, hey, I would like for you to do this with me. And then if he says yes, yes. If he says no, then it's like,
Yeah.
okay, well,
Yeah.
I need to go outside the house right now. I need to go and get it somewhere else.
So it's a
But
little bit like that Helena Rain quote you read about peeling the onion or the layers. There's one layer that she is not willing to show her husband.
yes,
So she has to go elsewhere, which is
right.
a fascinating little wrinkle in that. So Babygirl, I would recommend it. Just know that it is adventurous. It's an adventurous movie that will challenge you. How about that?
Yeah, yeah. And one other thing that I read that I thought was a really interesting mention. They said that Nicole Kidman's character, she she had it all. She just didn't have it all in the same place.
Oh, that's
And I
good.
thought that was just such a perfect way
Yeah,
to describe what her life was.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So the movie is Babygirl. Check it out. I'm sure it will be streaming soon. It's in theaters now. It got a very wide release for a movie as controversial as this one. Got a really wide release, but I'm sure streaming is just around the corner for it. And I hope she does get an Oscar nomination. I thought she was terrific in that. All right. Our guest today is a Saturday Night Live veteran. Since his 10-year run ended, he has starred on shows like Mr. Mayor, Me, Myself, and I, and more. He's done a ton of voice work, including shows like Bob's Burgers, DuckTales, Star Wars Resistance. His latest project is the animated series The Bravest Knight. It is streaming on Hulu. Bobby Moynihan joins us. Hey, Bobby, how are you? Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
So, Bravest Knight is such a good-hearted animated show. The story of a pumpkin farmer who becomes a knight, and you play his mentor, a troll named Grunt. So, the script says, "Be Grunt." How do you build that character from that? You're a voice actor. How do you build that character?
I wish I could explain to you how many emails I get a month that say, do you want to be a bridge troll? Because it's a shocking amount. It's a shocking amount. I got one yesterday. A lot of bridge trolls. I pretty much just go, do you want angry bridge troll, happy bridge troll? Where are we at? No, with Bravest Knight though, it was fun. I got to record with some of the cast and stuff, so we kind of just built it as we went. It was a lot of fun.
So I know this is based on books, and in the books, the troll wasn't a character.
Yeah.
When you talked to the writer, what was his reasoning for adding your character?
I think every story needs a little comic relief guy who comes in and makes a joke, especially when it's translated to television. In book form, you just need the story. In half-hour form, you could use a joke here or there. So I think, they brought in Grunt to lighten the situation a little bit. But I often just cause problems, I feel.
Yeah, but he's also kind of mentory, right? He's kind of a
Yeah.
mentor on top of that, which is cool.
Yeah, he's the smart idiot friend, the one that doesn't say anything profound until he does, if that makes sense.
So this is such a cool, important show. I'm a gay guy, so I'm not. When I was growing up, there was no animated series where there were gay characters, and it shows a loving gay relationship.
Yeah.
Raising a daughter. Season 1 was really groundbreaking. Talk about just the impact of the show from that perspective.
Well, it's just good that it exists. It's important. It's important for kids to see themselves on television and adults who are watching it with their kids. I can't imagine how beautiful it must be if you have a gay child, to be able to sit down and use this to open up conversations and start talking about it. And I think it's beautiful. It's like, the way Pixar kind of does, Inside Out comes around, and now you can teach your kids about emotions in a very easy way. It's almost handed to you on a silver platter. And I think Bravest Knight does that as well, where it's a hard topic. It's some things, people want to take their own time deciding when to introduce this into people's lives and their children's lives. And this is there now. This is there now for them to do that if they want to, and they can now. And that's important.
Yeah, and the life lessons, I think, they're just so helpful, especially to introduce it to a kid at such a young age, where they could really grow into it and appreciate it later in life. Like there was one great lesson that I love, and it's something that could be applied applied to anyone. There's nothing wrong with you having a destiny just as long as you create it. It's just so
beautiful.
smart.
Yeah, it's smart and beautiful, and it's needed. It's wonderful. My daughter watched a little bit of it and said, "Why does she have two dads?" And I said, "Because she does," and that was it.
Yeah, that's who I thought
no,
about.
no
I thought
further
about
conversation. And it
I
was
thought
beautiful.
about the kid out there who's got two dads or two moms and the way they would react to this, to be able to see their lives on screen, on TV for the very first time. I think it's just amazing.
And yeah, to open it up to, I mean, my kid saw it, was a little like, I'm not used to that. And I explained it to her, and that was it. They're not full of hate yet. They
Yeah,
are
right.
They are all accepting children.
So I read that your daughters loved trolls,
Yeah.
and this was prior to the show, right? That she had this attraction
Yeah.
to trolls.
Yeah.
So what was her reaction when she heard that you were going to be playing a troll?
I'm in a lot of cartoons. That magic has worn off. She never really understood it in the first place. She hears my voice coming out of something, she goes like, weird. And but at the same time, or we'll be watching something else, and she goes, "Is that you?" And I go, "No." And she goes, "Okay." Like it's so she likes the show, but I think she would rather I wasn't in it, so she could stay involved.
So you are in your, as we said off the air, you're in your office, and you clearly collect things. You have many things, stacks of them, and they're on display. And what do you collect?
Things I like. That's what I have learned to say, because I don't know how to explain it otherwise. I collect things that I like looking at. I grew up as a little kid, and every time I went into like a comic book store or a toy store, I would just marvel and walk around and look at it. And now I have my office as a mini toy store, so I can walk around and look at it.
So what was the first thing you collected and then it just morphed into your office?
I just never threw anything away in my entire life. I think that was it. It was like I was not we were not the richest family in the world. I would get my G.I. Joes from a used toy store called Play by Play, and I cherished them. And I think because when I got a figure in like its packaging, like I was like, oh my gosh, the packaging, because like I never got real toys. And then I kept all like my GI Joes and stuff, and then once I got SNL, I went, I'm gonna buy a TV, I'm gonna save all my money, and then I went, maybe I'll get this little thing, and then now we're here,
and one thing led to another. So I'm a huge fan of your characters on Saturday Night Live. You know, my favorite is Drunk Uncle. Drunk Uncle is classic, unbelievably fun. So did you make that up, or do you really have a drunken uncle?
I do not. I mean, everyone does, but I do not. I do not have a hilariously racist uncle. I have a very nice Uncle Mike. No, I remember that night very clearly. I had spent like 13 hours writing a different sketch, a character sketch called Lionel the Suit Salesman. I thought this was going to be my next huge thing on SNL. I was so proud of it and ready. I worked so hard on it. 13 hours, and then at 4:00 in the morning, I said goodnight to Jost. I was like, all right, man, I'm going home. Good night. He goes, hey, do you have anything for update? I got to write an update. And I have a list of characters. Like when you get the show, they make you give them a list of your existing characters. But I just made up a bunch of names just in case, so that I could keep the money if they ever used it. And I wrote down Drunk Uncle Mike. Like I just wrote down like, everybody's got a drunk uncle, and mine was and then I just dropped that and went, I don't know, I got this, I can play drunk really good, maybe like a drunk uncle that nobody wants to have at the Thanksgiving dinner or something like that. And he was like, all right, I'll write something up. And he wrote something up in 15 minutes, handed it to me, and I was like, this is great. I wrote a couple jokes down, didn't think anything of it. Went home and was like, can't wait to do this other sketch. And then it bombed the next day. And I remember putting it down and going, well, at least I got that stupid drunk thing later. And that crushed. And cut to, I have a Funko Pop of it in the background, and I can't believe it.
So when
Bonkers.
when you're writing these sketches and then you're doing it during the week and you're rehearsing, how much is it improv day of?
While writing, there's a lot of improv, but like when we do it on air, very, 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 very little improv. I mean, like, the only time I improvised during SNL was on Update during my later years, and by what I mean by improvise, meaning like maybe I took a moment, like I just had a little moment with Seth, or I did something with Seth, because like, if you improvise a couple lines and that adds 30 seconds to your sketch,
Right.
then the sketch at the
Yeah.
end of the show gets cut and that person hates you. So there was
Right,
not a
right.
lot of improvising. It's all timed out to the second because of commercials.
So when you started out, you were part of Upright Citizens Brigade, and we've talked to a lot of people who come from that background.
Yeah,
So
still am.
what was the first time you were on stage doing a character? What was that like? Was it intimidating? Was it what was that like?
At UCB or at
At
SNL?
UCB, yeah, at UCB.
It was the best. I mean, like UCB, the reason I'm on SNL is because I found UCB. I didn't know anything about it. I saw the sign outside and I remembered the TV show, and I was like, well, I love that TV show. I went in, they were doing a show. I sat down, I started watching the show, and it was improv. And I just went, oh, this I get. And I started taking classes, and a week later I was on stage, but it was what I wanted to do. So like, yeah, no, I would get on that stage anytime they let me. And that was the best part about it, was like, you show up at 11 o'clock at night, go in the back, grab whatever, like there was just props everywhere. So you'd grab a top hat, a long coat, and you'd hop on stage with your friends and make something stupid. And then the only difference with that and SNL was it would end up on TV and then in Entertainment Weekly a week later.
What made you said you wanted to do that? Why did you want to do that? Where did that come from? I mean, were you a goofy
Needing
kid?
attention,
Did you have
probably.
characters? Was it needed? Was that what it was? Needing attention?
I mean, probably in some capacity, yeah. I mean, all of it is like, Dad, love me.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
That's the truth.
Yeah, oh yeah. Also, drunk uncle is my father. He's dead now, so I can say that. But yeah. It's I loved SNL. I wanted to perform as a kid. I didn't know, and yeah, I think a lot of it was that. But now it has changed slightly, maybe. Now I do it for money and my children more than anything else.
Nice.
So I want to talk to you about the relationship that you have with writers on the show, because we've talked to other cast members, and I guess is it with everybody the way it works that you kind of like attach yourself to one writer for a lot of what you do? Is that kind of what happens?
I think the people who do well have that happen. I think everyone has their own journey. I think there's I mean, like if you want to get technical, there's a million thing. It's like my first year, like who you share your office with. Now I realize matters. Like if you get paired up with a writer and you guys have a great relationship, you can make money together for the rest of your lives. But then there are some people that don't work their way. There's some people that like to work alone. There are some people that, do the, and it's, so I think it's whatever falls in your lap at that place, and you adapt to it.
So I've been to Saturday Night Live to see it live, which was, I mean, I've watched the show since I was a little kid, so it was a thrill to be there. And I know the deal with the rehearsal, and there are more sketches, and then there's a cut down, and you see the live show. I just wonder, how often are you surprised by what makes the show from the rehearsal and what misses the show from the rehearsal?
Every single episode, because like the best thing in the show could get cut because it's 40 seconds too long or 10 seconds too short, or so it was learning not to go like, why did you cut that hurt my feelings, and rather just go like, oh, okay, it wasn't personal, just keep moving, we got to do the fucking show. Pardon my French.
That's
yeah,
all right.
It was a lot of that.
French here.
It was a lot of that. It was a lot of learning not to take it personally. I'm still doing it with that play.
Yeah, well, I think that's really, what being in show business is all about to a certain extent. I did stand up for a long time. I've written on shows.
Oh, sure.
And, sometimes
Well,
the
stand up
audience
is the
laughs.
hardest. I
Yeah,
think.
and you talk about like, oh, it works. A lot of times it works and then it doesn't work. Like, and in the same night, you can go to one club and
Oh,
you
yeah.
get you get an applause break, and then you go to another club and it's like,
Yeah. I used to get real psyched when my sketch would crush at dress. And then if it crushed at dress towards the end of my time there, I was like, fuck, we're screwed. It's not going to make it, because the 7:30 crowd is very different than the 11:30 crowd. And you kind of want it to go like well at dress so that you can not get excited and too cocky, and then it goes really well on air. But if it goes really well at dress, then you relax a little bit, and that's when it bombs on air. So it was like learning all that, and like it's a very different place. That room is been around for 50 years, and it's like the Yankees. People, it's their team. So when they show up there, it's a big thing. I mean, you said it, like watching the show your entire life and being physically in the studio is two very different things. I learned that at my audition. And
what was your audition?
I auditioned twice. The first time I did like the SNL audition that they told me to do. I did like 3 characters, 3 impressions, and that was it. I think I'm terrible at impressions. I do not like doing impressions. There are people who are mimics, and I am not that. So I just went for charm. I think I did Johnny Cash on sleeping pills, and I just sat on a stool with a guitar, and I went, and I just fell off the chair, fell asleep. Like I just did bits. I didn't do like impressions. I did Snagglepuss at a swingers party, and I think I just said I got my Christmas goose early. That was it. Like, yeah, I just did a bunch of dumb, silly things, but I think it was enough to get me in the door. I met with Lauren, and then that all went with the writer's strike happened. And then after the writer's strike, they called me back in, and I went like, well, they've already seen me that like I'm not gonna do the same stuff. I'm just gonna do a bunch of weird stuff that I think is funny. And I think that's what got me the show, because I literally went, this next thing is something I used to do as a kid, which is true. I used to pull up alongside people and ask them to roll down their window. Like, and I'd go, hey, I'm sorry, do you know how to get to Arbolado Drive? And they would go, no. And I would go, okay, it's super easy. All you got to do is you got to go down 3 blocks. You go down 3 blocks and you're going to see a Best Buy. And I would just keep giving directions until they drove away. And I would just do it to my friends. I thought it was funny, like to ask people if they knew how to get somewhere and then give them directions and watch their face. It was just a weird, dumb thing I did. And like, I did that at my audition the second time. Like I just like, I kind of went like, the first one was what you wanted, and here's what I wanted to show you, kind of. And like, I don't know, it was the smartest thing I've ever done, because it worked. Lauren was like, there you are. Like, I see you now. Now I get that. Now I see what you're doing. And like, okay, we'll do it. And I was like, whoa, okay.
Well, so it's great that you got, it's great. Excuse me. It's great that you got the opportunity to come back again.
Yeah. A lot of people
because I'm sure a lot of people don't. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. I've heard horror stories of friends who went in once and that was it. And I was like, you went in too early. You were not ready yet.
So I feel like your job a lot of times was to disrupt Weekend Update. Drunk Uncle, Anthony Crispino, you did, who had all the wrong information, and you did the guy who wasn't there a guy that kept telling Che that I can do your
Riblet,
job?
The first night that Che, because Che came in like in the middle of my time there, and the first night that Che came in, one of my best friends from college called me up furious and was just like, that guy, I could do it better than that guy. And he was just livid. And I thought it was the funniest thing. And I told Che, and he was like, we got to do that. So we just made up a dumb character and did it.
So is that like, for me, the Weekend Update is like the pinnacle of the, like I get up for the Weekend Update. Is doing a character on Weekend Update one of the pinnacle of SNL? Like, is that the coolest thing, the best thing you can do?
No. I think, I guess I would have, I I excelled at Update. I got very comfortable at Update. It is a different thing than the rest of the show. It's the most like stand up. It's just you. It's just you stand up is you standing on a stage telling people what you think and hoping that they agree or like what you think. It's the same exact thing. You could do sketches on SNL with everybody and the host and everything, but Update is you sitting in a chair going, I think this is funny. Do you? And I enjoyed it because I could just mess with Seth or Colin, and like I kind of got that freedom to be a little silly, and I enjoy sitting. It was very I loved Update. I loved it with all my heart. I went back a couple years ago to do David Pumpkins, and they were like, "Do you want to do a Drunk Uncle?" And I was like, "Oh yeah." And just sitting in the chair, like about to go on, I was like, "Why is this where I'm most comfortable, the most at ease, the happiest?" Sitting right there, about to go on. I'm getting choked up. It was the best.
That's great. So what kind of writer are you? As a stand-up, I was somebody who, and even today, just because I write, I have a pad and pen on my nightstand. Are you that kind of guy? You wake up in the middle of the night and like have to write it down?
Sometimes, I mean, like I have a lot of messages that I don't understand, which I just have, it's like gay fireman. And I'm like, what the fuck was that? What was I thinking? Like, what is that? Is that funny? Like I don't understand. Like, or I'll sit, like the other day I sat down and went, I have an idea. Let me just write it. And then like 8 pages later, I was like, okay, I'll come back to this when I feel this feeling again. And I kind of have that. I kind of have a lot of 30% things done. And then like, I go back to them when I need to. SNL taught me how to write. I was not a writer before I got there. I don't consider myself a writer now. There are people who excel at that. Like John Mulaney. I shared an office with John Mulaney, and I would just look at him and go like, oh, he's somebody who can go, I understand the structure. I understand what I'm supposed to do. Here it is. And that wasn't me. I was like, the opposite. I was like, what costume do I want to wear this week? Like I would go like, the costume department is amazing. I could have them make me a Buzz Lightyear costume. Okay. What would, but like, I would work backwards from like weird costumes or no, I am not a writer. I am a silly boy who was
Well,
like, what if we were dancing skeletons? And then it's like, okay, well, what does that have to do with that? And then it was just a patchwork of nonsense, a lot of my sketches.
But you actually wrote a children's book.
Yeah, I did.
Not all sheep are boring.
Yeah.
What was the inspiration for that?
My daughter asked me, we were to go to bed, and I had been, they said during the pandemic, they said, would you like to write a children's, or like, have you ever been interested in writing a children's book? I was looking for other things to do, not on camera. And I went like, oh, that's interesting. I don't have an idea for that, but like, I would love to. And then I was reading with my daughter one night. It said something about counting sheep. And she went, why do people count sheep to fall asleep? And I went like, I don't know. I guess they're just boring. And then I just thought it was really funny that people just call sheep boring and use them. So then I just was like, what if there was a book where you learned the sheep's names? You learned that they were, in fact, sheep with feelings and aspirations. It was more just making fun of that. I thought it was funny to say, like, not all sheep are boring. You don't have to count them to fall asleep. You could also hang out with them and be nice to them.
So
yeah.
I don't know if this has gotten to you or if you've heard this or not, but this is the 50th season of Saturday Night.
No way.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So there's the 3-hour special.
And this is a comedy
NBC.
show?
It is. It's a comedy show.
It sounds
it's
great.
Coming up in February. I'm assuming you'll be there. And everybody from that. What's it like to be the part of the history of that show?
15-year-old Bobby can't believe it. I got an invitation last week for the 50th, and it's like, it's crazy. I remember the 40th was like one of the craziest weeks of my life. And then, yeah, to go back to it after this long is nuts. And to know that you're a part of it, it's a lot, especially right now. I'm having a morning. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, it's starting to come like into my kids' radar now, so that's crazy. Like my daughter asked me something about David Pumpkins the other day, and I was just like, "Do you even know that I'm the skeleton in that?" Like, I don't think she knows yet. She knows David Pumpkins, but she has no idea that that's her father under that makeup. And like, I'm waiting for that moment, that terrible reveal. Uh, but yeah, it's a lot. It's back in my life again, and it's beautiful and heartbreaking and a lot of things.
Is there any cast member from the past that you've never met that you're really excited to meet or will try to meet?
I mean, like, I feel like in some capacity I have come in like in passing with all like, like I saw it's funny you say that. I just saw a picture of Don Novello the other day.
Sure.
He was Father Guido Sarducci, and I was like,
Oh,
oh my
yes.
God, I never met him. Like, I would love to talk to him for a couple minutes. Like those, like I like those. Like I got in an elevator one day at SNL and I looked up and the guy looked at me and went like, hey, like no clue who I was. And I was like, no way, Dick Ebers. And he was like, you know who I am? And I was like, I'm on SNL. And like, we got off the elevator and I just like talked to him for half an hour about like old SNL stuff. And like, cause I'm a nerd. And like, like that was fun. Like there's things like that where you go like, oh, Buck Henry's here.
Buck Henry, yeah.
Or like, or like you're walking down the hallway to go get a snack and Paul Simon walks by and goes, hey, and just keeps walking. And you're like, where do I work?
What guest host surprised you the most with their ability to play with everyone?
I think like when you say that, Bruno Mars was the thing that came to mind, where it was like, oh, Bruno Mars is hosting and musical guest. Like, oh, that's cool. Like he's a talented guy. Like I don't know anything. Like I wasn't like, oh my God, it's Bruno Mars. This is going to be the greatest. I was kind of like, oh, Bruno Mars is here. I might get something on because he, he's probably going to be busy with music. And then he was like the life of the party. I mean, like he showed up and was like, I don't know if you know anything about him, but like a lot of his family is in his band. Like he is just a guy that like is just at a family reunion 29 hours a day. And like he feels like it. Like he's always pumped and psyched. And like it was just a fun week. Like I remember going like, oh, I was not expecting like during the show itself to be like, this is fun. Like he's great. Also, he did that sketch, the Spotify sketch, where like the whole joke was the Spotify went down and he had to sing all the songs. And I have never felt like the physical room bounce. Like the building was shaking. It was going nuts. Like everyone was just so psyched. It was like a dance party. That was a fun week. I wasn't expecting
Yeah,
that.
it's funny. I just saw him in concert this year at the Intuit Dome, the brand new Intuit Dome here in Los Angeles. He puts on an unbelievable show. Big band. I mean,
That guy's
you've
an
got to be able to
entertainer.
move too. If you're the tuba guy, you got to be able to dance. I mean, it's impressive what he's able to do.
Yeah.
It's funny. I read an article. Bill Murray was asked who the
I'm not familiar.
greatest host he ever worked with was, and he said it was hands down Ray Charles. Never missed a line.
Oh, I saw that.
Absolutely on the money.
That was like Betty White.
Amazing to see the people when it's not going well. Okay, you don't have to name any names, but when it's not going well, when do you know during the week that the host is just not going to nail it?
Immediately or the day before. You just kind of see it coming. I was going to say, Betty White, when I was on it, Betty White did the same thing. Betty White came in and they brought in Amy, Tina, Rachel Dratch, and Anna Gasteyer as well, kind of like to do like cameos because they were like, she's up there, she can't like run around. She's not doing quick costume changes. They're not tearing clothes off of her like they're doing to me. You know what I mean? Like everything was Velcroed for her. You had to be very gentle with her. But also, this woman's been in the business longer than most of us have been alive. She came in. We got done at like 2:00 in the morning. She was in at 6 a.m. the next morning. I was like, Betty, are you okay? She was like, I had a hot dog and a martini at the hotel. It's my, that's like what I do. And she goes, I had a hot dog and a martini. I'm ready to go. And she was. And she memorized all her lines because she physically couldn't see the cue cards. She doesn't see very much. So she memorized every single one of her lines. She was insanely that woman. That I learned a lot just going like, I hope I'm going to start taking care of myself better because of Betty White, because I hope I am as sharp as a tack, and I've lost not a moment of my comic timing at her age. Like, it's astonishing. And then there's the ones that suck. Then there's the ones that come in and think they know better, or suggest that they could call other people for better jokes, or they go, "You're lucky I'm here." That somebody said that. "You're lucky I'm here because this show isn't very funny." And then you just go like, just leave. We don't, just go.
Oh my God.
Why is that? Why is that contingency out there? The people that say, by the way, it's with every cast. This cast isn't funny, or this group isn't. I always think everybody comes into their own. Like, I think this current cast has really come into its own, and I look forward to seeing Heidi Gardner and
no one knew Kristen Wiig's name when she started. They do now. You know Heidi Gardner. It's that.
Sure.
So where does that come from? That this cast isn't as good as the last cast and all that stuff?
People love to complain. People love to, one of the best things about SNL is complaining, or talking about it, complaining about it, saying what you don't like. It's like every sports team. It's name a sports enthusiast that doesn't complain about their team 75% of the time. I complain about SNL. I love it with all my heart. I love it more than most fans. I'll beat up other SNL nerds going, "No, I'm the bigger fan. I know more, and I was on it." I go like, but like, I'll defend it I'm a big Lost fan. I'll defend it till the day I die, but there are people that don't like it, and
season one was great. And after that,
well, if you want to fight, I'll fight you. I disagree. No,
hey, come on.
It's like that. I completely disagree. I think it was great from start to finish. And, but I do understand why people don't like it. And I understand why people get mad at SNL sometimes. I do too. But, everyone, that's part of it. That's why it's still here, is because it gets people talking, and it's not safe. I think people get mad when SNL is safe. I know I do. The best part about SNL was we never choose a side. We make fun of everybody. That's why SNL was really cool. And then every once in a while, now they have to choose a side, and that's important. Now it's very different than the 70s comedy. So when you choose a side on SNL, it's taken seriously, and the other half gets very mad. And then sometimes you got to do jokes for that half, and the other half gets mad, and it's a tightrope. But yeah, sometimes it sucks, and sometimes it's great. It was the same thing when I was on there, same thing when Belushi was on there, same thing when anyone was on there, except maybe Phil Hartman and Chris Farley. Those were always great. Those years were
great.
Yeah. So I don't know if this has ever been done, but if you had an opportunity to come back for a season, would you do it?
1,000,000,000%. My dream, I beg. I mean, like, I used to say it out loud when I was there. I was like, "Hey, for the 50th season, why don't we just do All-Star year? Why, like, 1 week it's Lorraine Newman, Dana Carvey, Jay Farrow, Noel Wells, like, just like a bunch of people. And then the next week it's a completely different All-Star SNL cast. Like, I wish that's my dream, but they don't listen to me.
That is a great idea.
It is a great idea.
I thought that would be genius. I mean, like, I feel like SNL fans would go absolutely insane for that. Just like change the roster every week and do it old school. Go like Dana Carvey, Jay Farrow. Like I would love to see that. I would love to see all generations perform together.
So to wrap up, I want to circle back to the Bravest Night. The one thing, animation is genius stuff, right? But it's the modern animation is pretty aggressive. It's cynical. It's not nice, and I think we don't have enough niceness in the world. This is a really nice show. Where did niceness go? Yeah, where did positivity go? Yeah, where did that go?
It's really hard to stay positive right now. The world is insane. Don't you feel this way? Don't you feel like a couple years ago you could go like, everything's crazy, but we're going to be okay. And now you're like, wait, so we're not sure if there's aliens. Everything's in chaos. Like, no, like, there's definitely an overwhelming sense of, I don't know what's happening, rather than like, it's going to be okay.
Yeah, it's not normal. It's that's the thing. It's not normal what's going on. So yeah.
And I try to think about it in other ways. Like my parents went through hard times. My parents went through wars and all that stuff. But this is different way. But there's also social media and all that stuff. And I have kids. Yeah. I don't know. Do you want, this is therapy, right? I'm paying you for therapy, correct?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Whatever you need. Whatever you need.
I appreciate
Well,
it.
wait,
You're doing a fantastic job.
Sliding scale, right?
Yeah.
Oh, just as a random question. How old are your kids?
7 and 1.
7 and 1. So you're not worried about social, like at what age is social media appropriate for a kid these days?
Oh, 40?
30?
Yeah, 42. Yeah, the 7-year-old has caught a glimpse of YouTube and now is like, I want to watch YouTube. And I'm just like, we watch these videos. I have to be there because if you click on something else, then all of a sudden they see something insane.
Sure.
Also, there are evil people in the world that like to put out videos that are 30 seconds of a normal cartoon and then stuff goes insane. And that is out there. So you got to watch. It's like, I'm learning. Also, I'm just, Miss Rachel, if you're out there and you ever see this, I love you with all my heart. Thank you for everything you're doing. Miss Rachel we did not have that with the 7-year-old. We have Miss Rachel now for the 1-year-old. And that woman is everything. She is saving parents' lives all over the world.
Well, we salute Miss Rachel.
Yes, we do, always.
Yeah. We love hearing the SNL stories. Have a great time at the 50th anniversary show, man.
Thank you so much.
A thrill.
I hope I make it. I have stuff to do.
And The Bravest Night is such a beautiful show. So congratulations on that. It's streaming on Hulu. Bobby, thanks for doing this, man. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
There you have it, Bobby Moynihan. What a nice guy. He was getting emotional there talking about SNL, huh?
I know. I was like kind of surprised. You have this like, this just boisterous comedic guy on the show. And not that everything is a joke, but I mean, it's just a testament to what it was like to be a part of something so special.
Did you ever get to go to Saturday Night Live?
I did. Mm-hmm.
It's such a cool. Did you go to the rehearsal or the show?
I went to the show.
Yeah, I went to the rehearsal. And I remember that I went to the rehearsal and then I went home and watched the live show. I was in New York, so rushed back to the hotel to see the live show. For me, the funniest sketch from the rehearsal did not make it to the show, which is just amazing to me. I guess Lorne has his own methodology, right? And he decides yes on this and no on. He's like the gatekeeper of the whole thing. And so I don't know why, but that sketch did not make the show.
Well, like Bobby said, you really had to have such tough skin and just not take it personal.
Yeah, exactly.
And like I said, I was talking about being a comedian, but it's no different than being in a writer's room and it's your week of writing the script and you sit down and you read it with everybody. And during the week, they start to change a lot of what you did. And even though they love the script, they were laughing their head. You can hear everybody in their office when they go and read your script. You can hear people laughing, and then they change it during the week, and you just can't be precious about it.
Yeah, you just got to accept that other people are going to get their say. Hey, that was awesome, Bobby Moynihan, terrific. The Bravest Night, by the way, one of the sweetest shows on TV. I mean, just so sweet and. So I think very, very important. So that's streaming on Hulu. Check that out. Sue, it is great seeing you. And we will see everybody next time on the Culture Pop Podcast.